everybody. You're listening to the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Billy Z.
I'm Bryan Pittard.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Matt Broussard.
Unfortunately, we don't have Brother Justin with us tonight, but we've got comics to keep us warm and safe and whatever. We also
please don't say warm, because then that makes me think that we're throwing them in bonfires and.
Oh no, I could never do that.
Never.
I can never do that. Oh, I don't get rid of comics. I'm probably a hoarder and just don't realize it. It's just
Me too, Bill.
It's just that they're in long boxes, so it doesn't look so bad.
It's well organized hoarding, so it's not like you're filing away dead cats or anything like that, or I don't know, Wendy's wrappers or anything like that. These are nice. They're wonderful. They're pieces of culture that you can take out and read and experience again.
There was a point after college where I was between jobs and I needed some money, and I remember. Yeah, so
sorry, that's how a lot of interesting stories start.
Instead of selling my wares on 53rd and 3rd, I went over to a comic shop and I sold pretty much a pretty solid run of Amazing Spider-Man from about 140 to 190 or so, and a Byrne Claremont X-Men run. And the one that really gets me is I had about 75% of the Amazing World of DC Comics, their internal fanzine magazine from the 70s. And
wow.
Yeah, I've never been able to replicate that entire collection. But yeah, I just don't get rid of them. I'm sure I have separation anxiety and over objects and stuff. Yeah, but I just don't get rid of comics. So that started off on a weird note. Let's get it back. Let's talk about something that's fun, like conventions. And I went to 2 conventions this past weekend. The first one was AnimeNext in Somerset, New Jersey, and that was taking place there at the Garden State Expo Center. A personal note, the Garden State Expo Center is also where I took the New Jersey bar exam. So it's kind of weird being on that same floor for that purpose, but it is going to be the final year that AnimeNext is at the center there in Somerset. They're moving to Atlantic City because they've just outgrown the facility. Initially, it started with one connecting hotel to the Expo Center. It spilled over to 3 connecting hotels. Can't say connecting, but they're within walking distance. I have to say, it was a very, very long line to get your weekend passes when I got there on Friday, and I could understand people giving up because it was hot and the line was long and it wasn't moving. But the promoters recognize this, and they recognize that they've just outgrown their facility. So it's going to be the last time at Somerset. I am always amazed at how well organized this particular show is. Particularly panels. The panels that they have are some of the most, I have to say, experienced and knowledgeable panelists running the panels. I sat in on a panel about the history of giant robots. I sat in on a panel about buying Japanese toys, which was, I think, was subtitled "Kiss Your Money Goodbye," and the guy that threw it was so knowledgeable, talking about exchange rates and pre-orders and things just concept I never, just complete foreign language to me, and I was fascinated. And I also sat in on a panel that was thrown by one of the guests there, who was Tyson Reinhardt, who is an ADR scripter and an actor for Funimation. And I showed this gentleman's picture to my other co-host there, if you remember. There wasn't any way I wasn't sitting on that panel. and it was interesting to go to a panel talking about anime, and I would say a good 30% of it was about Shakespeare in the end.
Oh.
It was pretty cool. Talking about tools that you have that you can use in areas you never anticipated. In terms of that particular panel and also the show in general, I tend to see anime and manga as areas of geek culture that have retracted considerably, and you don't get a sense of that at all from this show. I mean, it's a very, very big show. So, unfortunately, I was only able to attend one of the 3 days because of other plans. And I would especially like to thank the promoters of AnimeNext, because I think this is the 4th year that they have been very, very good to the Comic Book Bears podcast. And then the next day, I went to FlameCon over out in Brooklyn. It was promoted by our friends there at GeeksOUT, who appeared on the episode before the last episode. I guess that's the one way you could put it. I think the final tally from Joey Stern was attendance was at 2,200 people. It was a perfect venue for this particular show. If you grew up in the New York area, the Grand Prospect Ballroom used to run these commercials, and the owners, I'll do the imitation, so just run with me with this. The Grand Prospect Ballroom, we make our dreams come true. TV in the New York area was saturated with this particular commercial. And it was really heartening to see that there is a video that GeeksOUT put out with Flamey, the mascot, with one of the owners saying, "We make our dreams come true." So if you see that video and don't get what the reference is, there you go.
I'm so glad you explained that, because I had no idea what that was.
Okay. Only minutes away from Manhattan, elegance but affordable. I mean, you have to see these commercials. They're so awesome. I didn't get in the way too much with acquisitions because of some of the circumstances, which have been bettered. People know me, know what's going on there. One thing I did pick up from Phil Jimenez a sketch cover of the composite Superman. I had a Batman Superman #1 sketch cover. I figured, what am I going to do with this? As I was thinking about it, I was thinking back, and I love plugging other podcasts because, it's a very great community we have here. And one of the best ever interviews with Phil Jimenez was on the Legion of Substitute Podcasters podcast. And that was kind of where I got the idea, because I'd like to have a Phil Jimenez Wonder Woman or a Donna Troy, but sometimes you want something a little bit off the beaten path, and that's and Phil couldn't have been more gracious. Met Steve Orlando, who wrote Midnighter, which we'll be talking about later in the show. Met a bunch of people at the show that I had no familiarity before with their work. Anne and Yoshi from Massive were there, and I picked up a Massive shirt. They had lots of good stuff, including a massive votive candle. That is awesome. And my friend Edwin De La Cruz went with me, and he bashed the credit card, the plastic there, for his takes from the Massive booth. Northwest Press was there, and I picked up, finally, though I've had a digital copy for some time, I picked up a physical copy of Dash #2, and that was directly from Dave Ebersol, who's the writer of that particular book. It told me #3 is coming out really, really soon. I ran into a bunch of friends there, Matt Timmerman, my friends Thor and Patrick. My friend Brian Coffey was an exhibitor there. There's a lot of press coverage for FlameCon, so I don't necessarily want to dominate this conversation regarding it, especially since I was the only one there. But go seek out the pictures, go seek out the stories about the con, and it really was a great achievement that these guys pulled off. That New York City finally has an LGBT con, and I really doubt it's going to be the only time. My highlight, though, and this is one of those full disclosure moments because Mr. Brossard and I have a story in this particular book, was picking up my copy of GeeksOUT Presents Power.
Nice.
I have to give tremendous props to John Jennison for putting this together. It's the first time I've seen my work in color. Matt, I'm not sure for you. Was your Lovable Oaf pinup, that was in color, right?
No, actually, that was black and white, but there was sort of color in Shirtlifter.
Okay.
There was like a murky Pantone green.
Okay. I want to hold off on talking about Power until other gentlemen that I'm on the microphone with have actually had a chance to read it. One thing I have to say is, Matt, we are in very, very good company. This is a very, very strong anthology. I believe it's going to be available from the GeeksOUT shop very soon and probably some other resources online. So just want to give you the heads up, geeksOUT.org, to look out for when GeeksOUT presents Power, when that's available for sale. Again, it was available and premiered at FlameCon, and I really want to hear opinions from the other gentlemen that I'm on the microphone with before we talk about this in detail.
Sure.
Yay. There we go,
course.
too. And unfortunately, I could not go to the after party because I had a wedding the next day, but I heard that was awesome, super fun, too. Awesome Super Fun is going to be had by two of our hosts here, Mr. Steve and Mr. Bryan will be attending HeroesCon. So, guys, why don't you tell us what you're looking forward to from that show that's happening this upcoming weekend when we record?
Oh, well, I'm excited to go for many reasons. First and foremost of which to see Steve and hang out with him.
Yay!
Albeit only for Friday because he's got other plans.
I know. I'm kind of disappointed that this year I'm not going to be able to attend all 3 days. But my husband is actually flying out tomorrow morning to go and visit with his friends in Colorado. He will be performing a wedding on Saturday, so I'm flying out Friday night. So I can go and be with him and get to witness him actually officiating his first ceremony. So I'm really excited about that.
That is
But I will unfortunately have to miss Saturday and Sunday at HeroesCon. Friday I'm going to try to live it up as much as possible. So I'll be dragging Bryan around.
We're going to have a blast. So I drive from Orlando. It takes 8 hours. I'm going to get there rolling around like 10 a.m. and find our friend Lee from AnimeNext. Who's got a table, and we're going to leave some Flame On flyers and some other stuff. And basically, Friday is just for fun. Honestly, I have no real strong things planned, but Saturday and Sunday, we got panels. My buddy Cap from Nerdy Show, he and I are hosting a couple panels. The most, there's some great panels. Violent Images from Image Comics with people like Frank Thierry and Keller and Keenan Marshall Keller and Tom Neely, James Herron, and Andy Belanger. Like they're going to
Wait! You're moderating a panel with Frank Thierry?
Yeah.
Oh my God! I don't think I've ever been as jealous of you as I am right now.
Really? Well,
oh my
Bill,
God.
If you've got any questions, I will admit this is the panel that I'm the most like sort of doe in the car's headlights. I mean, I know some of his stuff, but
Frank will do your work for you.
Good. That's what we like.
Yeah. Just prepare for somebody who sounds like an underboss, like a mob underboss, and just prepare to laugh a lot and hope that there aren't children in the room.
Oh, jeez. Well, it is a family con, but usually these panels aren't very children heavy. So we're doing that on Saturday. We also have, and this is the one I'm most excited about. We have the Scotty Young panel. So it's, I think it's Scotty, and it might be his. I'm looking through the schedule now. His cohort, forgot his name, and I'm very familiar with his stuff. So I'm very excited about his panel. Looks like it is just Scotty, and then we have one more panel on Sunday, the cover variants panel at 1:30. We got Tommy Lee Edwards, Phil Noto, Arthur Adams, and Sanford Green and Mark Brooks. So right there, like some killer comics luminaries from the past 30, 40 years. I mean, I forgot how long Arthur Adams was doing stuff, but definitely spanning the ages.
Yeah. I'm going to say since 84.
Okay, so that's not too bad.
About 84.
So, I mean, this is great. I mean, we love doing the panels because, it's just great to talk to these guys directly. Last year's LGBT comics panel was the first of their kind at Heroes, and I was sad this year that there really just weren't any creators that I felt like it lended itself to have that kind of panel.
Mm-hmm.
But we're doing these other ones, and utmost on my excitement, I found out today Ramon Perez is going to be there, which I don't know how I missed it previously. They must have announced it at one point, but long-time listeners of the show can easily recount the many times I've waxed poetic of my admiration for the man and his art. I'm excited. I may be too excited. We'll see.
I'll try to keep you level-headed. Is he going to be there on Friday?
Yeah, he's going to be there the whole weekend though, so I can only really count for that restraint on Friday from you. However, my friend Adam is coming down or up with me, and he's going to be there on Saturday. And Cap should help also ground me. No, honestly, Ramon and I have been corresponding for a while. We have a mutual love of science fiction and Farscape, and just it's very exciting that he's going to be there to catch up with, because he hasn't been at he has not been at a show that I've been to in 3 years. 3 or 4 years since he basically came out with Tale of Sand, however long ago that was. So it's kind of exciting. I'm thrilled. You know, Ryan Brown is a good friend. He's going to be there. Nick Pitara from Manhattan Projects is coming back. He missed last year. Ryan Bodenheim, another Hickman guy, is coming back. They're doing a Hickman panel again, but they realize that with Hickman and his artists, they don't need a moderator. They just can go and let them do their thing, and that's what they're doing. So that'll be a great panel. So yeah, I'm super excited. It's gonna be great. HeroesCon, if you're anywhere near the Charlotte area and you like comics, it is the best show. It is probably like right up there with C2E2 and Baltimore, and just really strong comic books. Nothing else. No other crazy nonsense. Just comic book creators, indie creators. You know, Stan Lee's going to be there Saturday, so he should bleed off the lines. Thank God. Last year it was one of the guys who created Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah, that was great, because then they weren't, you know, they weren't in line for Jim Starlin or for Matt Fraction as much. They were doing that when you can go talk to, because unlike a lot of shows, I mean, this, you know, I don't know, New York Special Edition might also be like this. There's just direct access to these people. They're hanging out. They're doing their thing. You can go up there, talk to them. They're all very approachable. I've never had a bad experience. Knock on wood. Yeah, great show. Love it.
Yeah, definitely. And to add to that, if you know, if you're going for, say, the first time, or even, you know, aren't too familiar with any of the big two artists, their Indie Island Artist Alley, part of Artist Alley, is amazing. You get to see so many creators, either, you know, in the webcomic sphere, a lot of zine writers and zine publishers, and also a lot of, you know, just smaller, you know, less well-known artists and writers that are just kind of, you know, getting out there and getting their names out there. And they have such a great support for these independent creators at HeroesCon that, you know, before I got back into Marvel and DC and even some Image books, that's exactly where I made my beeline. I went straight in as soon as I got down on the convention floor, went straight to Indie Island to see what kind of fantastic things I could see, because it's always unique. It's always really fun to see who you're going to meet, who you're going to have a great conversation with, somebody who might even become, you know, in the next couple of years, a person to watch. Definitely, it's I'm really looking forward to it. I'm kind of sad I only get the one day this year, but I'm definitely going to make the most of it.
Okay, well, let's go to the source material that these conventions are based around, comic books. And I want to go over to the Marvel end of the business here first. Bryan, why don't you tell us what's going on with Secret Wars?
Oh, man. So Secret Wars, like, continues to just blow me away. I mean, it is so much more lighthearted and fun than a lot of Hickman stuff. Hickman can be a little ponderous. It can be a little, you know, and this is some serious stuff, of course, but like, I'm looking at the issue right now, and the first scene of Secret Wars number 3, we talked about, I believe, 1 and 2 already. So number 3, it starts with Doom having a political, like, state of affairs, basically like a status report from Doctor Strange. And Ribic, first of all, I mean, I love the man to death. I don't remember if he's going to be a Heroes, but God, I hope he is. He's awesome. And his art in this is just so alive. He has the best facial expressions I've seen on comic book characters in forever. There's deadpan humor. There's like, you know, Hickman's not playing this for laughs, but there's just moments where it is really kind of amusing to see this relationship that has developed between these two characters. Historically, you know, that know each other, certainly, but they're not buddies. You know, in this book that starts out is basically Hickman or Dr. Doom, or, you know, Doom, the god of Battleworld, having a sort of a weird but sort of familiar conversation with Doctor Strange. And what you get out of it is that basically both of them know where they've come from. They know they're both from 616. They've been there. They created this world together. And then the rest of the issue kind of goes off and explores not different aspects of the world. They tend to stick pretty close to I think it's called Doomguard. But, you know, exploring the world, talking about different characters, seeing what their motivations are. And you get a little bit of Doctor Strange doing some of his own machinations. You get him going off and basically finding the heroes from 616, the arc from the first issue. He, I guess, has had this in storage for like a few years and finally lets them out because he just didn't know, how to handle it. And it gives some backstory, some good heavy lifting of what's happened. But, you get a little bit of that status. You find out things like Johnny Storm is the son of this world, which is kind of awesome and sort of, it reminded me of the Superman story from Grant Morrison, All-Star Superman, where basically to save the world, he goes up and stays in the sun, helping it stay alive. So, in this case, Johnny Storm pissed people off and they exiled him to the sun. So that's kind of an awesome idea. So yeah, no, it's just great. I mean, the rest of the tie-ins are fun. I've been picking up a lot of the X-Men books and all this other stuff, but the main book, if you just like, crazy idea, alternate universe, we're talking like Age of Apocalypse type story. Like that's what this is. And it's just a lot of fun. And I don't know where it's going. I'm sure it's going to a reboot of the Marvel Universe, but I don't know how they're getting there. I can't see how the end game plays out yet. It's still pretty early days and it's just a lot of fun. So,
Matt and Steve, do you have any comments about the core series?
Well, I am up to issue number 3, so I guess I'm caught up with the core series. It is really interesting seeing this because, of course, they don't really make it too clear in the first 2 books or some of the tie-ins that Doctor Strange is actually in on this. That he has his memories, and in this, there's actually a really interesting point where he discovers Ultimate Spider-Man has kind of hitched a ride on the Cabal's arc and has been kind of hiding out for, I guess, several months, and comes out and he's like, oh, you remember, what happened, and brings him to his secret lair where he's been holding the other arc, and I guess it was the interaction with one of the Thors that allowed the other arc to open. So he used that Thor to open that, the second arc that actually had the heroes in it. But it's a very interesting idea where you have 2 people who remember everything. One who's the god of this world, Doctor Doom, and then the other one is Doctor Strange, who, in their conversation at the beginning, basically says, well, I didn't want to be the god in this one. I let Doctor Doom have that mantle because I didn't want it. That's part of the conversation. But everything else that's happening, the interaction, Doctor Doom and Sue Storm being, this deeply in love couple. I mean, obviously fulfilling Doom's dream of having Sue Storm, had a really interesting interaction. Seeing her show how much she loves him and respects him by removing his mask. And I don't know about you, but I think this is the first time I've ever seen his face.
I want to say I've seen his face before, but it's been a long time, certainly. Yeah. And there's been different incarnations.
And I think probably the most famous depiction of his face, Doom's face, is probably the tail end of the original Secret Wars, so that kind of makes perfect sense.
Exactly, yeah. And it's you're right. I totally forgot about that. But it is really interesting because that's usually one of the long-running tropes. I remember, reading some of the old, the old Silver Age stuff from Marvel, where it was always, what does his face look like? Oh, it's horrible. It's so horribly disfigured, and it's always a tease. You never get to see it. But here it's front and center in a very big splash page, a huge panel. It's really interesting that he and Doctor Strange remember everything, but all these other people are coming to it as if it were brand new to them. And seeing as how they make the choices they've made, or they've made those choices, Sue's to be, the consort of Doctor Doom, to put her brother or make her brother the son, which again is an interesting decision that probably the real Sue Storm wouldn't have made, except when she went evil for a little while. But it's really interesting how they're playing with this. I don't know if Hickman's going to be able to keep that up the entire time, where it makes sense and it's interesting and it's intriguing, the decisions that the different heroes and villains have made as part of this new world. But I'm really enjoying it. I'm really curious to see where it's going to go.
Tie-ins.
Ugh.
Who wants to start? Matt, I understand you like a book from a particular year.
Yeah, and I was going to mention that one of the things that I like about the core title is the fact that Hickman's sort of drawing a great deal of inspiration from this idea that, I mean, multiverse stuff isn't really sort of a fresh thing, but the idea of forming a world where we don't understand the physics of it, we don't understand the dimensions of it. He's playing off of this weird sort of like medieval, the earth is flat, the earth or the sun revolves around the earth kind of an aesthetic. It's present in the core title for sure. There's the Johnny Storm is the sun, the sort of castle, the Galactus sentinel guarding the castle and stuff. But it also sort of works really well in certain tie-in books. And this week I read 1602, which plays off of that aesthetic in a huge way. I mean, it's the Marvel Universe resurrected in a setting that ties into Neil Gaiman's 1602 series. If you haven't read that before, it's a beautiful limited series, a couple of limited series, where the Marvel Universe is sort of reimagined as taking place during the Elizabethan era, and all of the characters have analogs in that setting. So Daredevil is a blind, I think he's like a bard or something like that, and Nick Fury is Queen Elizabeth's sort of agent who does, dirty deeds and protects her and things like that. This is focused on a new batch of sort of 1602 characters, including Angela, who's sort of been transformed into sort of the love child of Cate Blanchett and Dog the Bounty Hunter. She's wearing this amazing armor that Marguerite Sauvage illustrates with it looks like she's having a great deal of fun with it. All the details, the armor and the ruffs, the big ruffly collars on all the characters, and like I said, it's more of that sort of the world doesn't really make sense. We've gone backwards in our understanding of science, and there's all this sort of hysteria about witch breeds, which are I guess supposed to be mutants in the 1602 tie-in book. And Angela's mission is to seek these creatures out and kill them or banish them from society in order to protect the safety of the people in that part of the battle world. It's super fun. I was talking a lot about Kieran Gillen last episode. This is a collaboration between him and Marguerite Bennett. And the other half of the art is done by Stephanie Hans. And it's super fun. It's a great collaboration. It's wicked. It's got fancy dialogue and like almost like a medieval sense of like how much violence should be in it. It's great. I thought it was really fun tie-in for Secret Wars.
Anyone else read that one?
I did not, because I wasn't sure. I love 1602, the original book, but I'm not as big a Angela fan, so I'm going to go check it out now.
Nice.
Steve, how about you with tie-ins? What have you been reading there?
Well, I've been reading some of the X-Men ones, but I did pick up the first issue of the Weirdworld tie-in, and it's of course by Jason Aaron, and I love his stuff, so I figured that it would be a good read. The art is by Mike Del Mundo, and it to me looks very painted. Lots of watercolors, just very interesting design, and that immediately drew me in. I don't know much of the history of this, and I think it's based on a property from the 80s, if I'm right.
Yeah, Weirdworld originally appeared in Marvel Premiere I think it was issue
Okay.
38. And then there were tropes from that I think appeared in 3 issues of Marvel Super Special, which was their high-end magazine in color, which is where you had the Kiss comics. I think it was called Warriors of the Shadow Realm. Let me look that up because I may be screwing up two different franchises, but I believe they were one and the same. But keep going. I'll check it.
Okay. Well, one of the interesting things, it's again, very much a very serious, very heavy narration, very much a Conan type story, or at least sounds very much like a Conan type story, with the main character Archon fighting off a whole bunch of strange beasts, and almost dying, and of course being very much, should I let myself fall off the edge of this floating island, or should I fight my way back through? I don't know anything. I don't remember anything but blood and pain, and very deep and heavy. And then he does mention, I don't have anything in this world, but I do have my greatest treasure, my map. And when you see that map, it is the map that a child would draw when creating their sort of, their fantasy world. And it's hilarious. And, up to this point, it's such a heavy, very, soul-crushing type read, very epic epic poem style, And then you see the map, and it's like, wait a minute, there's something else in here that's ridiculous. And honestly, I didn't know where it was going to go after that. And I'm really intrigued to keep going because I want to find out what this is. Again, I don't know any of the history on Weirdworld. So I'm not sure if this is part of the mythos, or maybe it's one of those situations like a child is transported to another realm and turned into a warrior, or was lost when he was a young boy and ends up in some fantasy realm, and this is kind of like his the only relic he has left of his humanity, or from Earth. But I am just really intrigued, and of course Aaron plays around with this with sort of your expectations a lot. Archon talks about how here comes some orcs, they're completely, or ogres, they're completely useless, stick and stone throwing type creatures, and here they are, they're gun ogres. they're firing cannon blasts and ballistas at these dragons that they're encountering, and they start saying the same disparaging things about Archon. He's one of those stinky weird humans that just runs around with swords and throwing stones and stuff. What a ridiculous thing. I just, the humor that's kind of thrown in unexpectedly, the map, the conversation with the ogres, the dialogue there, very unexpected, and of course very Jason Aaron. Mm-hmm. So he keeps the weight, the heaviness of the idea, but then throws in some levity to kind of break it up and give you an idea that this is not everything is what it seems. So I'm really intrigued by that, and of course the what I presume is going to be the villain of this tie-in shows up on the last page, and immediately I'm just sort of like, wait. This could be really interesting. So very much intrigued by Weirdworld. I'll pick up the next issues in the tie-in. So
okay, I got some background on Weirdworld. Okay,
fill me in.
It first appeared in the black and white magazine Marvel Super Action, and then was featured in the color comic Marvel Premiere number 38. Man, I got the issue right. I'm so happy.
Nerd.
Comic historian.
Okay. Push those glasses up.
Mm-hmm. Work it. And there was an interesting backstory as to how the work appeared. Initially, after the Marvel Premiere issue, there was going to be a 60-page Weirdworld story. It's hard to say that, Weirdworld story that was going to appear in the color version, Marvel Comics Super Special, which I had mentioned. There was a problem with the deadlines. Mike Plug was the artist with Doug Mensch as the writer. The contract that Marvel wanted Plug to sign was the standard contract given to the work for hire freelancers, and he refused to sign, so he had to secede the work, and that went over to John Buscema, who took care of the 3-issue Marvel Super Special. There were additional Weirdworld stories that appeared in Epic Illustrated and in Marvel Fanfare, one of which was drawn by Plug, and all of them are collected in Weirdworld, which came out from Marvel's collected editions in April of 2015. So you should be able to find that. So if you want the whole shebang, it's there in one shot.
And of course, they probably brought it out because they were bringing out this property for the tie-in. So that's pretty interesting. I mean, it's a good kind of similar to what DC did with Convergence, bringing back these old properties in the original format, more or less, to kind of entice people to pick up some of the back catalog or reprints. So I just might be.
And also because trademarks and service marks don't renew themselves.
Yes.
Always keep that in mind. If you're wondering why in 2012 and 2013 we had a Human Bomb limited series, trademarks and service marks do not renew themselves. Okay. Being less cynical and going over to some more of the Secret Wars world, Steve, you had mentioned you had read some of the X-Men tie-ins. Bryan, I understand you've read all of them. Why don't you tell us about some of them?
So I am partnered with an X-Men fan that actually I think surpasses my own X-Men fandom. So as a result, I am required to buy all X-Men books. He's not listening, although he is almost in earshot. So I've been reading, let's see. First and foremost, and I believe Steve already covered this, first issue is Inferno. The second issue did come out, and I will say that the second issue of Inferno, to me, was far more entertaining and interesting than the first issue. And that's because the first issue had to set the world up, so obviously it's going to do a lot of exposition-y stuff. But the second issue was fun. Madeline Pryor, in her, evilly trying to take over Limbo, sort of best effort, with her little child Cable. Oh, how cute. How adorable was that? Oh, don't call me Nate. My name's Cable. Of course it is, honey. So adorable. We had Nightcrawler getting turned into a giant lizard hellbeast, which is kind of odd. I thought they were going to go for a more straightforward, who's the red demon that he gets turned into in like Earth X? Starts with a B or anyway.
You know what I'm talking about? Belasco.
Yeah. Belasco, yeah.
Yes.
I thought he was supposed to be a werewolf when I saw him in that artwork.
Okay, that's what I thought. It looked sort of familiar, so yeah, that's probably what it was. But it was sort of an oddly stylized thing. But and then so I may have spaced on the first issue. Why is Colossus? What's his deal with his arm? He has is that like the soul sword thing?
Well, he was actually injured in sort of one of the flashbacks, one of the early incursions into the Inferno part of Manhattan. And it infected the Inferno virus, or the demon virus infected just his arm. And so it's pretty much useless to him. But it looks cool.
Didn't Hopeless already do that in the first X-Force book he did? No, I don't know. That was a Hopeless thing too. Anyway. But yeah, no, it's fun. It's fun. Inferno has been fun. I really enjoyed it. Extinction Agenda carries off of the Extinction Agenda event back in the mid 90s, I think, early 90s.
Very actually, I think it was early 90s. It was before the expansion, when they got out of the Savage Land and started up the two teams, the gold and the blue team. So I think it was the event right before that one.
And so this is a continuation of that idea set in and around Genosha, with Havoc and his looks like girlfriend Wolvesbane, and they have to go take on the Extopians, which are basically the X-Men team, some of the surviving members, with the magistrate that rules that area of Jean Grey Phoenix. Or is it Jean, or is it the other Phoenix? It might be the other Phoenix.
No, I think it is Jean Grey. I think
it might be Rachel.
Really? Oh, maybe.
I don't know. But a Phoenix nonetheless, and because they call her Magistrate Grey throughout the thing. But anyway, so the first issue of Extinction Agenda, basically it has that Havoc-led sort of proto X-Force-y, X-Factory sort of team that was around back then, going to take on the Extopians. And I think it's because the Extopians have a cure for the plague that's affecting all of the Genosians, and not to be confused with the Genosians from Star Wars prequels. The Genosians. So they want the cure, and the magistrate's not letting them have it. And I guess Extopia is basically like a paradise. It's like almost like Utopia at midpoint in X-Men versus Avengers. Very high future tech, fancy mutant paradise, yada yada. Contrast that. And I'm sorry, it ends with Cameron Hodge coming back. Of course, you can't have an Extinction Agenda comic book without Cameron Hodge playing some role, and of course he shows up. And we had Years of Future Past, which actually I will say, and I need to look up the artist real quick. Extinction Agenda story's okay. The art's really cool. Same thing with Years of Future Past. I didn't know what they were going to do, and it's pretty much like the other things, a continuation of Days of Future Past, if that universe was sort of preserved and kept going. So Kitty Pryde from Days of Future Past, she jumps from the past to the future, and she's that younger Kitty Pryde and interacts with the older Kitty Pryde. Well, the younger Kitty Pryde, who we think we see in Years of Future Past, turns out is actually a child of child of adult Kitty Pryde and Peter Rasputin. I believe that's correct. And Wolverine also has a child, and that he shows up, and basically it's that same world. The Sentinels have sort of controlled the mutant population. They have to register, but there's a secret underground, yada yada. I thought that the story was interesting, but the art was excellent, very dynamic, and lots of fun. But overall, if you like that story, it's an interesting what if it kept going. A lot of these I feel like are just like kind of what ifs in a bubble.
I love the aesthetic of the Years of Future Past. It's sort of it harkens back to a certain era for art for X-Men comics that I really dig, and like the artist did a great job of doing that. Wolverine with the shocks of gray hair, and Magneto in the wheelchair. Like there was just enough tweaks to the look of all the characters that said this is a very specific take on the future of the X-Men, and it was fun. It was kind of like really familiar themes, because I mean the X-Men sort of have to keep coming back to this potential future over and over again, but I like this take on it. The only thing I outright hated, was whatever the heck the power of Wolverine's son is.
God.
That was just like, I felt like somebody had 5 minutes to come up with it, and they're just like, okay, I'm gonna just do this, and it didn't make any sense. I hope they actually try to tie that into some logical combination of mutant powers between two characters, because right now it feels like some random dice thrown character generation. It's not good.
It was really, it didn't make any damn sense. Now, Mike was the guy who did the art for Years of Future Past, and I love it. I love it. The other Extinction Agenda was actually Carmine Di Gian Domenico, who I've never heard of. Don't know if anybody else has. I'm sure he's done some great work, but the name does not ring any bells. I'm just glad I could pronounce it.
DJ Menico, I believe, did the recent Peter David relaunch of X Factor.
Then that fits completely with the style, and I can totally see that.
Yeah, I think he did the first. Actually, I think he did the entire run, if I'm correct. I know Chris Anka did covers,
right?
But I think he might have done maybe a couple fill-in issues. But DJ Menico had done most of it.
Now, the other book that has not come out in print yet, and this is another X-Men tie into Secret Wars, but is out digitally, and in fact is Marvel Infinite, which is their sort of motion comic-y sort of format that they do. X-Men 92. I've actually been really enjoying this almost more than the other two, and mainly because I started reading X-Men in the early 90s. So I came in right after I came in right after Extinction Agenda, and kind of backfilled, but I came in specifically on the Jim Lee era, and then shortly thereafter the comic or the cartoon that the X-Men had, both sort of informed this view of the X books that many people who stopped reading comics still think of the X-Men as. You talk to them in those sort of jackets and fainting Jean Grey and just yeah, exactly. Everybody can hum this song. Like, that's like great.
Yep.
So they're doing this Infinite book. It's called X-Men 92. It's written by Chris Sims and Chad Bowers, co-writing with art by Scott Koblish. And it's great. It's so stupid and fun, but it takes you back like nobody's business to that era. Not only do you get the X-Men playing baseball, which is a staple, right? You get the X-Men going to a mall and playing laser tag, which admittedly I don't remember if they did, but it fits the era. I remember playing laser tag, and not in the mall, but it just takes me right back. You get dialogue that's ridiculous. You get a fainting Jean Grey, at least at one point. And they actually screw with you, because at the end of the first issue, they introduce a villain from the Grant Morrison era, Cassandra Nova. And it's obviously like, whoa, wait, they didn't. It's kind of a dissonance at first, but in issue 2, spoilers. I mean, we've been spoiling stuff. They show that she is actually more than just Cassandra. She's actually the Shadow King incarnate in this vehicle, who's like a clone of Charles Xavier. So, it's great. I've been really enjoying it. In motion comics, I have no problem with. I don't think it really adds that much, but the art is very vibrant and it's Jim Lee without all the Jim Lee posing, if that makes any sense. you get that sense for the look and feel of the characters that from the 90s, but you don't get all that panels and pockets and ridiculous sort of body physics. I mean, it actually works really well as a digital comic. So I think all of them are pretty strong now, and I'm really excited. Extinction Agenda, which is also sort of a tie into the Morrison era, written by Morrison collaborator, oh man, what's his name? I just spaced on it. From Nameless, Chris Burnham. We'll talk about Nameless in a bit.
Oh, not Extinction Agenda. You're thinking of E is for Extinction.
Thank you. I always do that too. Yes, thank you. I should not drink too much before these shows. I think as much as alcohol. You should. Oh, great. Thanks. You're one to talk, mister.
Alcohol has never graced these lips. They just go past the lips. That's all.
But Chris Burnham is writing this extinction. Oh God, extension. Too many E's. Extension of that Morrison era of X-Men. So I'm very excited about that to see how that turns out. But so far, if you're an X-Men fan, both recent and certainly older, you're going to dig in on all of these great tie-ins and have a lot of fun. So,
well, and for the X-Men 92 comic, it is starting out as a digital comic, of course, being released first. I think it's bi-weekly. But as of this recording, it should be out in print. I think it's being released on the 17th in print, the first issue. So
digitally, how many issues are out?
It's just two, I think.
Just two. Okay.
So they're going to release the first issue in print on the 17th, and then I'm guessing the second issue would be 2 weeks after that.
Is X-Men 92 at the 99-cent price point, or is it more?
It's more. I think it's $1.99 or $2.99, but it's I wish it was 99 cents.
Okay. Oh, it might be $1.99 factoring in 2 issues per one print. So
that could be.
That could be it. Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to add about Secret Wars there?
I think that's enough. There's other great tie-ins. I mean, we could talk more about other stuff in the coming weeks as they do more issues, but overall, it's just some of them are what you think you're going to get. Some others, like Infinity Gauntlet and Weirdworld, they're just something new. Oh, and not the Rucka, the Monsters one.
Yeah, we talked about that last time.
Yeah, that one.
That was great.
Those are just great random new things, and if you believe the Marvel publicity, these are all important and they're all going to matter and yada yada yada, and it's like, okay, great. But I mean, it's just, I don't know, I'm far more excited. Admittedly, I'm more of a Marvel guy, I'm far more excited about this than I was about the tie-ins to Convergence.
Okay, well,
so far.
I think that's great because, as you know, I'm a DC guy, and I had my little fun in the playground there for 2 months, and I'm happy to hear that you guys are having something similar.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
there's nothing wrong with nostalgia, and I think it's even nicer when the nostalgia is presented through a new and interesting filter. So,
Exactly.
yeah. So I had my fun. Now you guys having your fun. So, you mentioned DC. Why not talk some DC? Big book that came out just a couple days ago at the time we're recording this is the first post-convergence, divergence issue of Green Lantern. And some people weren't too crazy about the character design. So someone take it there.
I have no idea where this sort of hooded trench coat thing comes from, but it's very confusing looking. I was sort of horrified when I saw the solicitations for DC and saw that this was sort of like a locked in look for the character, and I thought, really? There's, movies coming, you need, the public to recognize this character, and you're going to go do and this crazy reworking of his powers and his costume and give him like a power gauntlet and stuff. It reeked of the 90s in the wrong way. Not in like a fun Jubilee X-Men 92, let's wear neon blue short shorts and have a bright yellow costume. This is like, it felt like the extreme Green Lantern look. It's bad. I can't say enough bad stuff about it.
Well, to kind of take that down that same dark hallway, really he reminds me of Hobo Hal. Like it really is. It's a Hobo Hal, and he looks dirty and looks like he smells like garbage. But that's just normal for this type of design. And I guess he's a loner, Dottie. He's a rebel. He's got a gauntlet and a hoodie. And it just I know the as of this point the September solicits have come out, and the Green Lantern Annual is going to explain how he bought this hoodie, I guess.
It's Hot Topic. Let's not spoil it.
He went to a Hot Topic somewhere in like the Tau Zeta galaxy and picked this up. But he's got long hair. He looks like he's been homeless for a while, which essentially he has. And I think there are better ways to indicate that he's been kind of living on his own and running from his past without making him look like Nomad circa 1993. And the gauntlet idea is an interesting idea that they brought up in issue number 40 right before Convergence. And like that's a little bit of a looser, less controllable version of the power ring, sort of like a prototype. And there are some funny moments in the book, but man, I really hope that this design is A, temporary, or B, pays off somehow, because I'm less excited to see what he's doing than I am on the upcoming Lost Corps. That's going to sort of fill us in on what's happening with the rest.
Oh, you mean the Lost Army?
Lost Army, that's what it is. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that because I actually am caring more about those characters. Of which there's a billion of, than I am about the one character that's essentially the glue holding the Green Lantern universe together. And I'm less intrigued by the book right now. I will continue reading it, of course, because I'm hoping for that payoff, but kind of not so excited with it right now.
Okay, Brian, I know you're a big Venditti guy. I was wondering if you read it.
I have not, and I will be honest, I picked it up in the store because I was like, well, let me look at it. And I remember the Krona power gauntlet thing he did. This is the prototype of the Green Lantern technology, yada, yada, yada. And in like flipping through it, I'm like, no, this isn't my thing. Now, I am going to see Robert at Heroes. He is definitely, he goes to that. And I will talk to him because I would like to know if he could give me some broad strokes of what he's doing. And I may pick it up after that, but yeah, when I flipped through at the store, I couldn't care less. And I like Green Lantern. I mean, this is the sad thing. And this is every other DC relaunch, and you guys may have some other opinions, that I have seen has been actually really interesting. I'm on board with some of these different changes they're making. And I'm hugely on board with the not adhering to continuity, because you have in Green Lantern, you have him off in the universe as a hobo with his cosmic bindle and his hoodie and whatever, riding the freight cars of the universe. But in Justice League, he's back to Hal Jordan with the logo that sort of projects off his chest, just because you couldn't quite see it from every other angle, like for no reason. Like they're definitely realizing that these books don't have to necessarily be at the same time, which I know some fans probably it just drives them nuts.
Yeah, one of whom was supposed to be on this podcast.
But wait a second, isn't that just sort of like because it's Bryan Hitch? Because every time Bryan Hitch does a big book, it always feels to me like the reason why the characters are wearing their own costumes and stuff is because it's been in the works for way too long. Age of Ultron, for example, there was all sorts of characters that they sort of like dismissed the problems with the continuity by saying like, oh, well, it's a potential future for Marvel. But I think I read it in Bleeding Cool or something like that like it was a project that had just sort of been delayed over and over and over again. And so every time Marvel switched up the characters, there was problems with aligning that project with the look of each character. And I feel like this Justice League thing is the same thing. Like I wouldn't be surprised if it's been some of the character designs were started when Green Lantern actually looked like that.
Well, I think
Hitch,
that you're actually
Hitch isn't doing it.
we're actually talking about the Justice League book, which is Jeff Johns and Jason Fabok. The Hitch Justice League of America hasn't come out yet.
Oh,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, it still has that Green Lantern looking like.
Well, it has all the characters.
As
if they were, just stepped off of Justice League #1 from 2011. And from what I understand, that was the initial concept of the book. Period. That this is a venue for him to tell classic, as far as you can call something that happened 4 years ago, Justice League stories without necessarily adhering to continuity. I think it is somewhat bold in that it's a device that I think will allow them to tell good stories without being locked to something in particular and then try to fit it in. It'll be interesting to see how long that lasts.
Yeah.
Right.
There seems to be a lot of synergy between the Superman and Batman books. They're clearly happening at the same time, not just because of the link of Superman and Batman.
Right.
We'll see. You have some novel books like Bizarro that could take place anytime. Well, Steve, why don't you talk about that one?
Oh gosh, I'm glad you brought it up because Bizarro. This was one of those books when it came out. It was one of the first of the new launch titles. It is a miniseries. It's only 6 issues, which is a smart idea. I don't think that this could sustain as a long-running title because I don't think it would sell very well, except for the fact that it is ridiculously good. I actually passed this up the first week, and after that, after I was reading up on some of the other launch titles that I kind of passed by, this one came up on everybody's top of their list. So I went and I picked it up and was not disappointed. The story itself is done by Corson. I'm not sure what he's done prior to this point, but it's a humor book. So it's it's funny, it's silly, it doesn't have anything to do with continuity, which is perfect. I mean, this is the type of thing that would be perfect for a Bizarro book. There's a lot of people would probably get really cheesed off if they had to sit there and read page after page of Bizarro speak that follows absolutely no grammar rules, but then of course it shouldn't because Bizarro speak doesn't have any grammar rules, so you can say whatever. But it's just basically it's a buddy comedy road trip book with Bizarro and Jimmy Olsen. And I'm not exactly sure why they're driving cross country, except for the fact that Superman didn't want Bizarro around town anymore, because just as we've seen in every other appearance of Bizarro in the recent Bizarro Justice League Lego movie, as well as some of his other appearances, he kind of just messes shit up. And so, if he's out of town, it's not so much of a problem. But, setting it up that simply as a premise, really allows for a whole bunch of ridiculousness. And the Jimmy Olsen character is a great foil. He's kind of over it, having to deal with this overgrown, super invulnerable, giant, crazy person. And his pet chupacabra, which is a very interesting little story. But the first issue pretty much centers around them kind of going cross country, getting into an accident, and then having to either get his car repaired or buy a new car at a used car lot run by a gentleman who fancies himself the King Tut of used auto sales. And as these kinds of books go, something interesting happens to change the King Tut into a supervillain. It kind of goes off, sets up the next couple issues. But it is ridiculous. The art is so fanciful. It's so fun. Has a touch of a Scotty Young style. It's by Duarte. I'm not too sure. Again, what else?
I was going to say that it looks a little bit like he's channeling some Eric Powell.
Yes, that's exactly it. Gustavo Duarte is the main artist. However, there is an interesting single page done by Bill Sienkiewicz. That's great. And it's just really a fun book, and I definitely recommend it just because it's off the wall. It's not what you would expect. It's a great laugh and a fun little story, and I think it would make. I think this is going to be one of those miniseries that people still remember fondly years from now, because it's great. It doesn't have anything to do with continuity. It doesn't have to. Takes some great characters and puts them in silly situations.
Just some backstory. What set off Jimmy on this voyage with Bizarro was that Clark was joking with Jimmy about if he had gone off with Bizarro on a road trip, it would make a great coffee table book. Jimmy gets a little obsessed with the idea of having written a coffee table book, and then jumps off a building, and Bizarro saves him, and that's what starts this off. That was in the preview. Okay, so Bizarro #1 is intended as a limited series. Some of the other new DC books are intended as ongoing series. And one of those books is Midnighter. Who wants to tackle this one first?
Don't all jump at once.
Sorry, I haven't read it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Steve, since you have the baton, why don't you tell us about Midnighter #1?
Oh, gosh. Nobody wants to hear me talk on about 2 books in a row, but okay.
Yeah, we do.
We love it.
Well, okay. So, of course, this is the very much awaited, very much anticipated Orlando book for Midnighter #1. I'm not super familiar with the character because I've never been a big fan of, the Authority or Stormwatch. But, oh my gosh. I mean, in this book, he explains who Midnighter is so very perfectly. And, of course, Midnighter is the extreme version of Batman, if Batman could be any more extreme. He's a confident fighter. He basically enters the room, and there is several lines of dialogue over several pages where he just talks about, well, as soon as you showed up here, you've already lost my fight. I know all these ways of killing you, and I'm definitely going to be using at least one of them on each of you right now in the first couple of pages. But he's just this macho, crazy, super powered, in sort of like, I guess, a semi-realistic, I guess he's not super strong, but his reflexes are very much enhanced, and of course he has absolutely no qualms of slaughtering enemies directly in front of civilians in very messy ways. But the setup, of course, is that he's having to fight these terrorists while he's out on a date with a very handsome gentleman. And interestingly enough, Steve Orlando goes ahead and follows through with that. And you get to see Midnighter at his apartment post a night with this man that he's been dating. And it's really nice to be able to see that, in that this is considered this is just part of the story of this character. This just sets up who this character is. He's this, beefy, sort of extreme 90s style vigilante who also happens to be into men and is apparently a very good lover too. But I'm just so excited to see a book like this in DC and promoted the way it's been through DC. Is this going to be appealing to everybody? No, it's a very violent book, of course. And Midnighter's not everybody's cup of tea, but I'm so excited to continue reading this. I just can't wait to see this character fleshed out a lot more. And, again, with Solicits that have been coming up, he's going to be encountering Grayson or Dick Grayson from the Grayson book. There's going to be a couple other crossovers there.
Yeah, he's already been in Grayson.
He has been. Oh, great.
Arc, yeah. So,
that's wonderful. Yeah. Okay, so that's it's pretty good. I'm glad that he has his own book now, that he can really shine. And Steve Orlando, just the dialogue and introducing us, or introducing myself, who really doesn't know too much about the character. He did a great job there. The art is fantastic. It fits the feel of this book perfectly. The art is done by
I believe it's pronounced Akko.
Akko. Okay.
The only thing I remember this gentleman doing was about 6 or 7 issues of Constantine.
Okay.
That's about the only thing I remember him doing previously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's it's an interesting style. Of course, I like how he's constructed a lot of the panels. Lots of cutouts, lots of tiny little focus boxes and focus panels there, so you can kind of break up the action a lot. And so it's a great book.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure I'm not alone loving this book. So.
Yeah.
Oh no, I mean it was so good, and I tweeted at Steve and I was like, this is before I read it. I said, you certainly should carry on the great legacy of Midnighter. I mean, Warren Ellis, who created the character, intended him to be a subversive character when he made him gay back in their early 2000s, and having him be basically, like you said, the extreme Batman is just it's exactly what it should be. And with Grayson, there was that kind of fun dynamic of not will they, won't they, but certainly the flirtation and the sort of not perverse, but the sort of different Batman and Grayson kind of dynamic was interesting to explore. But in this book, I was so happy. Like, the man lives a gay man's life. Like, he's on Grindr and he's having dates, and he's has even the stupid haircut where it's all the rage, having been just to gay days in Orlando, having seen all the guys with the short cropped sides and the top. It's like he's living that life, and they pay homage to the past by referencing Apollo and his line, even some light can escape a black hole,
and also with the gardener as well. I mean, there's a lot of Midnighter's background there.
That Gardner stuff I wasn't as familiar with, because that's more recent, I think. The original incarnation, they were just sort of part of the Authority.
Mm-hmm. But as you got into Midnighter's backstory post first arc of Authority, that's when that stuff sort of developed.
Is that okay?
That's when they elaborated upon Midnighter's connection to the God Garden and all that. Yeah.
Okay. Did they bring that up any during the New 52 run of the Stormwatch?
I don't believe so. If it was just briefly touched on, because Stormwatch was in so many different directions with the shifts and creative teams. I mean, the Starlin stuff was nothing like whatever came before it. I honestly do not think that was there, because the New 52 version was so heavy on the bomb babies and the engineer, and I really don't think that was where that played. I think it was in the after that first Hitch bit of Authority.
So it might have been the Morrison stuff.
No, I really think it was in the ongoing titles.
Okay. I'll have to go back and dig it out.
But put my hand to Bible on when it happens, because Wildstorm is like, that's kind of chaotic to me. I know stuff happened, but basic the basic trajectories, but not exactly the sequence where they actually happen, because most of my Wildstorm reading post Image is like a jumble.
Well, it's a good jumping on point, even if you don't know all the backstory. It really does a good job of sort of exploring what you need to know. And like that Orlando wrote him as a, I mean, I'm not saying all gay men are quite as lascivious and forward and violent as Midnighter, but man, it's just nice. I'm like so happy to see this, and this is what I feel like is indicative of the whatever they're calling DC's reboot, which is, you know what, just tell good stories, make it contemporary, make it relevant, and have fun. And there's no house style, and you do whatever you want, and continuity, don't worry about it for now as much. And this is a great first issue for that new direction. So I'm okay. On board.
I have to say, this comic presented me with the pitfalls of skimming, because when I initially picked this book up, was not in a situation where I could actually read it. I skimmed it very quickly, and my first feeling was style over substance from the skim. When I got into it, oh my God. I mean, this book has so much going for it. It is unabashedly sexual.
Yes.
And,
yes.
I'm looking at you three handsome gentlemen by your Skype IDs here, and,
that look nothing like us. It's okay.
But knowing that, all four of us have read our share of gay exotic comic books. We're used to this action. I'm not used to this action on pages 17 through 20 of a DC comic book. And you have to keep that in mind.
And that was great.
And I think there's a lot of inspiration coming from a book that is headlined by a gay male character, which has a number of traits that aren't necessarily admirable. That says a lot about us, because, we're as varied as any group. And just so many takeaways from this. I mean, the dialogue is razor sharp. Midnighter's voice is consistent through the book. If there is any changes to it, it's only presented when there's interactions with another person. So his dialogue with the hookup from Oakland is a little bit different from the gardener, naturally. But I almost felt like the book came to an abrupt end. I wanted it to keep going to like 60, 70 pages, which to me is, and I also have to say, like, I almost think that this touching upon his origin might be a MacGuffin. If this was like a Hitchcock film, on the surface it's going to talk about his origin, but not, they're really going to throw everything. In Stormwatch, one thing that did result was the sort of kind of breakup of Apollo and Midnighter, but it didn't feel like a breakup till you see this picture, till you actually open this book and on his Grindr-esque profile see single. It didn't feel like that. Maybe because they remain teammates and were there. It's weird because it's like it's a book that could feel like a gimmick that never does. It could easily feel like a gimmick, and it doesn't. And I just thought it was master storytelling, and I really love this book.
Actually, can we talk about that Grindr profile? He's M. He's currently single, looking for dates, friends, and sparring. His interest is violence, invented. He's chronically new in town because he teleports everywhere. He's got a computer and brain, superhumanly flexible, generally use flexibility for justice, looking for other uses. Have head-butted an alien. Whatever you're thinking, the answer is likely yes, but with punching. And I'm just sort of like, if I could, that's the kind of Grindr profile that people should have, rather than, DDF and whatever. But it's ridiculous, and I think it takes somebody who has a tongue-in-cheek sense of humor that Steve Orlando obviously has to really kind of get this character. Because again, he's an extreme version of Batman, and what is Batman other than a tongue-in-cheek? This is a man in tights who's notoriously super grim, whereas Midnighter is just very egotistical and not grim at all, actually enjoys and delights in the violence that he causes. So, again, as you were saying, Bill, it's less than admirable traits, but still just fun to read. It's fun violence.
and on top of it, the violence, the fight sequence is kinetic and complex. And nothing I was anticipating. I was anticipating a knockdown, drag him out, and it operated on a very different level. It was, I have a lot to still wrap my head around this particular book, and it will be at the top of the stack, I think, for some time to come, unless it goes south. I really, really enjoyed it.
I'm glad to hear that this is getting good reviews because, as a big fan of the Authority, I've got the whole Authority series, at least the Wildstorm volumes in my collection. It's always kind of sad when a book like that and a team that you get invested in, that you kind of feel like, wow, this is a really cool superhero team. It's sort of the team for Wildstorm, and then they kind of get orphaned by shifts in the publishers, and their entire universe kind of disappeared on them, and they were worked into the New 52, but not in as significant a way as the Justice League. So I'm happy to see that they sort of like have this. They're in the hands of creators that love them and respect them, and they're going to do cool things with them again. So yeah, I'm very encouraged by your reviews. I'll probably check it out now.
Okay, cool to hear. And I am hoping that even if it doesn't go too far, I do want to see Midnighter plant a kiss on Grayson.
Oh, at least.
I think that is something that Dick won't see coming.
I'm so glad you went that direction and didn't, go for something like a hand job from Alfred.
Ooh, too soon.
Too soon.
Oh, that's so mean.
Oh, Lord in heaven. Any other DC? Oh, Steve, you want to talk about Constantine the Hellblazer, I believe.
Yeah, you know what? I'll keep it really quick because, again, we just mentioned one of the best things about this DC sort of relaunch, taking all these out of continuity, just tell the story, make it enjoyable, make it interesting kind of concepts. Constantine, in the first issue, corrects what the New 52 did to Constantine's solo title. I really did enjoy reading the character in Justice League Dark, but in his solo book, it lost all the interest, the wicked glee that the original Hellblazer had, as well as the dark, very serious, very gripping storyline.
It was weird. He was the most sanitized in his own book. That was one of the weirdest byproducts.
Definitely. Like, I didn't really want to continue reading all that much. And especially when, I think, to me, to use the overused TV term, it jumped the shark, was when he ended up in Earth 2 towards the end of the run of the book. And it just lost all interest to me. But this, and I think it has something to do with the fact that I'm a big fan of Ming Doyle and James Tynion IV. So the fact that they're working together writing the book, because Ming is one of my favorite artists as well. I have a lot of those, but I love her style. But this is, I think, the first book I've read where she's actually credited as a co-writer. And I think it's Riley Rossmo who's the artist. The style, picking up this book and actually opening it up, it felt like a Vertigo title, and not just any Vertigo title. It felt like the height of Vertigo excellence. So early mid-90s. Again, we've had a lot of these flashback. I think this is kind of like that idea that the 90s wasn't always the best, had a lot of ridiculousness, like anything quote unquote extreme just kind of was just bad and overdone. But they also had some amazing work that came out from there and amazingly iconic things. And I think Constantine Hellblazer was one of them, of course, from the late 80s, early 90s. This book brings it back to that feeling. It's not necessarily a 90s book. It's very updated. The style is very updated, but it's in a good way. It really, I don't know. I think this one is definitely going on my pull list forever, as long as it keeps up its quality. But I mean, the characterization of Constantine is back to his old, smoking, grumpy, bisexual self. In fact, there's a scene where he's hitting on this huge, beefy, restaurant proprietor, and just kind of, just this really big bearish dude. And he's like, hey, I think I could get on with that, until a demon sadly interrupts him. Pisses me off because I'm like, hey, I want to see what happens next. And this, basically a desire demon pops in, steals him away, and immediately they hook up. But the interesting, one of the more interesting visual choices in this book is he accompanies her to her club, and basically she is a demon who's been living topside, so to speak, for quite some time, and has made some deals with the underworld that she won't banish any other demons, so she won't get in any other demons' way, but she also won't collect souls herself. So she's kind of a semi-innocuous, but she also has the ability to really manipulate people, which she of course does with Constantine the first time we see her. But she runs this club, and the club is built in the style of Dante's Inferno. So each floor is a different circle of hell. And the way that Rossmo chose to actually illustrate that is a 2-page, I guess sideways, sort of stacked version of each floor. So each floor is just sort of like a line. And the dialogue, if you're not reading it correctly, you might get a little bit confused. The dialogue actually follows from right to left or left to right, depending on which direction Constantine and Blythe are walking. So the first time I was reading, I'm like, what kind of conversation are they having here? But it's just really interesting. So you get to see the representation of all the sins, the Dante's Inferno style. This is heresy, this is greed, this is lust. And of course, it ends in the ninth circle, which is treachery, which is a perfect narrative cue to understand what's going to happen next. And I'm not going to spoil the ending of the book, but it is a perfect Constantine story. It's for somebody like me who's been raised on a steady diet of Vertigo books and Supernatural, which I talked about with you guys today, about how much of a huge fan I am. This is kind of the best parts of combining that and bringing Constantine back to the Hellblazer. So the subtitle of this, Constantine the Hellblazer, it's perfect. If you were looking for something to marry the old Vertigo title with the most recent DC or the modern DC, this is it.
And the TV show.
Oh, yeah, and the TV show. Skip the New 52 Constantine title. Just forget that it existed and just go straight from Hellblazer to Constantine the Hellblazer. It is
But most of Justice League Dark is okay. Yeah, Justice League Dark is Constantine.
Whoa, wait a second. Justice League Dark was atrocious.
Oh, I don't know.
It took
my heart is breaking.
It took some of my most favorite memories about the Vertigo imprint and misused those characters so badly. I mean, Shade the Changing Man was basically just a completely different character in the guise.
Well, he wasn't.
He had the coat, and that was where it did not remind me at all of reading Shade the Changing Man.
Well, you
would have been okay after issue 6 then.
Yeah. He was just there in the setup first story arc, and then from there, those characters really solidified, and it was the Zatanna Constantine book. They basically were the heart of every story, and everything rotated around them, and I really love that dynamic, that relationship from that book. In the later story arcs, it kind of went all over the place. Mostly due to one major crossover that they had with the big event that was at the time. I think it was the
Forever Evil, the Blight.
The Blight, which I was like, it's okay, but when you have to shoehorn actions and storyline in with an event, it really does take away from the character development, and they did an okay job in trying to avoid that, but expecting it too much. But it's still it kind of. It hit the rails at that point, and the latter end of the book was okay. It was just okay. But the early part of it, I think the first 25 issues were fantastic storytelling.
I'll give you the covers. The covers by Ryan Sook were some of the most gorgeous New 52 covers that I saw, but that's it.
I also bring that up in terms of Constantine, though. Because I do think it was a very consistent voice for Constantine through the book, and it was a far more interesting voice for Constantine when you compare it to his own title. His
own title was... You might as well have not read it, because there was absolutely no impact, continuity, New 52 continuity and all. It had no impact on, his appearance in any other book. And just I don't know, it just wasn't a great read, which is unfortunate because it was Fox who was doing it, and he's a great writer, but in this I don't think it found its footing. Maybe editorial decisions, maybe just the direction that he had to take the character. I was disappointed in that. But Constantine the Hellblazer, in the first issue alone, I know that this is the actual sequel series to Hellblazer.
Mm-hmm. And I do also think in Nightmare Nurse we had one character from the New 52 that's somewhat interesting.
Yeah, she was.
Let's face it, most of those characters are bombs. The Talons is about it, really, since New 52 was announced, right?
Yeah.
I can't think of too many interesting characters there.
Yeah.
That I think will have some legs. And for some reason with her, I do think that there was enough of a complex backstory that I think other writers could pick up on it and do something pretty potent with it. All right, so we've looked through the Marvel section of the spinner rack. We've spun it around and hit the DC section. Let's go to indies. Mr. Matt, don't be nameless. There we go. Worst throw ever. Okay, go.
Very nice segue. Yeah, Nameless. So I'm going to preface this review by saying that I took Nameless and Providence to a coffee shop. And I didn't really mean to bring along with me such a some reading material that was so saturated in like evil and horror and like grisly fates for stuff. But I'm sitting there reading these books and they're very good. And I'm starting to realize the imagery, if somebody was to walk by my table and spot me, flipping through this book where there's like people being decapitated, there's random nudity, there's, people being like sexually assaulted over, the hood of a car. I started to get really nervous, and then that worsened when this family came in with these toddlers, and the toddlers are like running around my table, and I'm thinking, this is the worst possible scenario that could happen because they're comic books. Surely these kids are gonna like grab one of these books going like, it's Superman, and then tear it open and there's like, Grant Morrison's like, horror dimension spilling out onto the page. So it was really funny. Like, it added to the suspense and the terror inside me by like trying to read these books discreetly in public. So that aside, they're great. Both Nameless and Providence were really, really enjoyable. Nameless, I'm starting to get the hang of this weird, disjointed, disrupted narrative. In case you're not reading the series yet, it's Grant Morrison and Chris Burnham doing sort of like Event Horizon, the comic book. It's astronauts, some sort of massive asteroid that's hurtling towards the Earth. These astronauts are landing on the asteroid to try to prevent it from impacting, but at the same time they also sort of have to perform some sort of like demonic exorcism because there's some sort of like ancient evil embedded in the asteroid. While all of this is going on, the main characters are experiencing like a total fractured perception of what's going on. They're sort of imagining these horrible scenarios where there's mass murder, and I guess they're sort of like foreshadowing what will happen if this asteroid lands on Earth. And like I said, by the third issue, I'm starting to be able to like understand how those conflicting narratives are all sort of like piecing together, which was good practice for Providence, because Providence kind of does like, I don't know, like 2 or 3 different narratives like split up and not really clearly. I mean, other than clothing and hairstyle, I had a hard time figuring out which pages were continuing which set of events. But yeah, I'm in for both of these series until the end. I'm very curious.
So
or until
I have
you go
a question. Mad. I'm reading Nameless as well, and I'm a big Grant Morrison fan, as we know. I don't understand what's going on. I really don't. Like, I just read The Filth, and The Filth was more straightforward than Nameless. And I'm glad you're getting the hang of the storytelling, but oh my god, I'm so lost. Like I think like he's doing the cards in this issue, which okay, I don't know enough about the what's that called?
Tarot?
The tarot, thank you. I don't know enough about it to really get what he's doing. So that's my own fault. I'll have to look into that. But I just like he's jumping around, like you said, and well, so then you mentioned Event Horizon, which I totally see the comparison. I hated Event Horizon. It was the most awful, freaky mind fuck of a movie I've seen in forever. And it was a sci-fi film, and I was like, oh, I love sci-fi. And then it like made my eyes bleed, and I thought, oh no, I can't do this. Like my soul feels dirty. Like that doesn't happen very often.
Are you sure that wasn't the intended feeling?
Oh, I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was, and I hate it. I really hate it. If my soul is going to feel dirty, I better have done something really fun.
Okay, so I didn't mean to conjure feelings of watching Event Horizon because I think that movie's like fairly terrible.
Oh,
it was only the most obvious like.
No, but I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right, and I'm getting that same reaction out of all of this. And like, I love Morrison, I really do, but I don't. This is kind of like Sea Guy to me. I like parts of it, and I just don't understand what he's doing. And Sea Guy, by far, was a far more straightforward narrative thing. Like this is the most like surreal and back and forth and left and right. Like I hope that at some point it sort of closes the loop and we go, okay, now I see what was happening and why this was doing. But I'm a little worried it's not going to. So I'm glad you liked it. I'm still going to buy it. Like that's not even a question.
It's hard for me to recommend it though because it is really grisly. Like there are numerous pages where I'm like, I feel sorry for Chris Burnham for having to like figure out how to draw some of this.
Like I almost feel like Nick Pitara would have been a better choice because of the extreme gore. I mean, Burnham can do it. There's no question. But like Burnham in his other stuff is pretty, you know, like I don't know. I see these Frank Quitely derived or inspired artists like Pitara and Burnham and Cooter, and I just like storytelling wise, you can really see how they diverge. And Burnham, you know, man, I love his art, but the storytelling is confusing, and I think that's Morrison. Like I'm not blaming him entirely, but I like I said, I want to see him close the loop. I want to see the story go somewhere. And then I'll feel like, okay, I can recommend this and give you the pitch. Like, you know, when you give anybody a recommendation, you got to give them the pitch. And like right now, Event Horizon is as close as I'd get, you know?
I will say that I think I liked Chris Burnham's storytelling more in Batman and Robin. I think they played more with editing the sequence of motions in a fight scene or in an action sequence in a way that made my brain sort of like do somersaults. But I was always impressed at how they managed to do that. Like they would sort of take a fight sequence that most artists would do in like 5 panels, and then they would edit it down to like 2, and it would still come across as having like a fluid flow to it, but they were just being so clever about how to do like something that felt like a very modern reinvention of the comic book storytelling technique. Whereas in this, it's confusing, it's disjointed, and I don't feel like they're sort of doing that sequential art acrobatics that I was so impressed with on Batman and Robin. But it's still very impressive artwork.
Oh yeah, no, the art's awesome. I love Burnham, but I can't wait to see how this ends. Now Providence, we didn't get too much into that. I did read that as well. I love Alan Moore. Freudian slip there. I love Alan Moore, and I'm fascinated by the history that he's weaving into this. Because I remember reading in one of the interviews that he really wants to tell sort of a proto, who's the author? Man, my brain's
H.P. Lovecraft?
Thank you. Lovecraft story, you know, talking about the setting that Lovecraft himself was in Providence, talking about the thematic things that Lovecraft read about that informed his mythos of Cthulhu and all that. Like, I love that. And then that making your main character gay, who Lovecraft was vehemently was he homophobic or just anti-Semitic or?
Oh, he was
all of the above.
Yeah, he was
yeah,
tremendous bigot,
so like
racialist. Let's put.
Well, he was from Rhode Island, so no, I'm just kidding.
So very subversive, and that's why I still love Alan Moore as a writer, because he does stuff like this. He reinterprets historical things and augments them with his own or embroiders his own subversive meaning, turning these real things into sort of tropes that completely play against the reality of the people he's writing about. Like, I love that. I love this whole thing. If anything, I felt like it was a little sort of a slow burn, which again, it's Alan Moore. It's going to be sometimes, but I kind of thought they'd get more into what's going to happen earlier than they did. But the art by Jason Burrows, who has worked with him before on Avatar books, it's very solid. Just very does exactly what you need it to do. There's some great storytelling and there's some great, unfortunately, female nudity. Unlike the previous Lovecraft thing Moore did, where there was fish dicks, in this we get some old woman tits. Which
it was the kind of old woman nudity that like is in The Shining. It's like ew.
Yep. And I was just kind of like, all right, well, that's cool. He's not playing it for titillation, I don't think. At least not for most people. I don't know. But very honest. It's very honest. Like, that's what's nice about Burroughs is his art is honest. It's not cheesecake. It's not over the top. It's not salacious. It's just, she's nude. She takes her wool coat off to, excite her lover. And it's very honest. So I like that. And then I love the back matter, which is sort of just its own little kind of like a journal from the main character's perspective, because you get more into the subtext that he depicts very loosely in the sequential storytelling. He actually digs into in the first-person journal, and I felt like that was, again, really honest and very relatable to somebody in the closet or someone dealing with the loss of a lover and in that time period. So I'm very excited for more of these issues.
One other indie book that we've been raving about has been Jupiter's Circle, and the third issue is out. Bryan, you want to tell us about that?
So the last two, and I'll keep this somewhat succinct, the last two have been about a man in the closet, superhero in the closet. This issue takes a new direction, but in that same time frame, dealing with one of the heroes and his love affair with a 19-year-old girl. Which I will say, art style wise, like, I love the art. Wilfredo Torres did this. It's a very nice, classic, smooth sort of pencil. But the characterizations of the older man and the younger man, I guess the older guy is called the Flare, and his chippy, for lack of a better term. April Kelly is like, she's supposed to be 19. She looks like she's from like the 50s era. Doris Day, or she looks a lot older than I think they maybe should have gone for. But it's a story of a guy meeting a girl in a professional capacity and taking an interest, even though he's married and has a kid. And his life choices from there sort of go in a direction that is all too common. And that's what kind of touched me. I mean, my father left my mother and I and my brother when we were sort of, formative years for another woman. So like seeing that sort of play out in a comic book theme is interesting. And the fact that his little teammates, in the sort of pseudo Justice Society, they call him out on it. They're like, you really are going to have a 19-year-old ward or sidekick when obviously you're making time with her, whatever. Like that was really kind of honest. And I mean, the whole thing, it's just the first issue. I'm guessing they're doing like these like 2-issue arcs of the stories of the different characters, but it was a little close to home, and yet interesting all the same, because it explores these superheroes doing real world things. This is not a new idea, but I think Miller's doing something kind of fun and sort of really touching in a lot of ways, more so than unfortunately or fortunately, a lot of his work. So I'm really loving this.
Yeah, I agree there. There is, I think he's probably going to continue doing this where he's doing partial, maybe 2 issue story arcs focusing on the different members of Jupiter's Circle. But I like this. It's a very intimate, a very intimate background
There's a
for each
poignancy
of these
to it.
characters. Yeah, where you understand the motivations a little bit. Like, you kind of understand why this character is doing it, or, well, maybe not why, because it is kind of ridiculous, but you can kind of understand how he's making these decisions and what effect these decisions are going to make on him. Because, again, these may be super powered people. In fact, I think in this world, they're the only superpowered people. There's no super villains or anything. They're just the heroes from Jupiter's Circle. How they're still very human and very flawed. And of course, the public image that they're presenting, like all superheroes, is godlike, almost divine, beyond reproach. And here they are in very intimate ways, revealing that they're still capable of making harmful decisions that harm themselves, that harm their families, friends, or capable of hiding secrets, like we saw with the last in the last story arc. Secrets that could be harmful to themselves, without being able to reveal who they are. They were putting themselves, in a position where they could be blackmailed and potentially bring, problems into the inner circle. This is another form of that, except in this case, it's, this guy basically getting the honey on the side who, could very well get hurt because she doesn't have any superpowers. And his family is obviously being hurt because, well, here they go off, they're being tossed to the side. It strongly reminds me of the stories in Astro City.
Yep.
And I love Astro City. I've talked about that at length on this. How this kind of peeling back the curtain, that you even don't get very much with modern superhero storytelling. You do get stories that focus on how these heroes are flawed. You see, the damage, the personal damage that Batman has with his relationships by being Batman, or there's a lot of those gritty, very painful, very personal stories that are being told with costume superheroes with the big two. But this is it's taking that kind of sacred era, that sacred golden age era, and cracking it open and bringing that same gritty realness and very personal intimacy to those types of characters, which we don't often see. And it's not something that I expect from Mark Miller, but it's really good, and I love it. So
there's an elegance to the way that he's, reducing these sort of common comic book conventions into something that works for a life lesson. Like in the first 2 issues, he was showing how that dual identity has a really different connotation to closeted gay men. And in this, the relationship between mentor and sidekick takes on a really, sort of serious implication, because if in this case, it's not done with an ethical approach, and so we get to see what happens when Batman without a strong moral center takes on this Robin and exploits him almost. And I think that's this is a very inspired series from Mark Miller. Like he's doing some stuff that's you would think that he would be kind of tapped for extracting this kind of drama out of just plain sort of classic superhero stories, and yet he's sort of mining it for some really fresh, fun directions to take these characters that we don't even have any investment in. I mean, these are characters that I don't even really remember from reading the first Jupiter's Legacy series, and yet they're taking on such significance in Jupiter's Circle. So I just continue to be impressed with the way it's going.
I can't add anything. You guys said it all. Really. Beautiful analysis from the 3 of you, really.
High fives all around.
I want to end the discussion of the indie books with a book that is super duper indie. At FlameCon, Hazel Newlevant had a booth, and I was familiar with her book, If This Be Sin, earlier, and I was thinking, God, I've talked about this on the show. I talked about it on a podcast, just not this podcast. This was over on an episode of, oh God, what am I talking about here? Or two. I read the initial story in the If This Be Sin collection that she has out as a mini comic. And the story of If This Be Sin revolves around Gladys Bentley. This is real life here. She was a Harlem Renaissance blues singer. And when she was young, she left home and came of age in Harlem during the Harlem Renaissance. And this was a time where there was some spirit of tolerance in relation to gender issues. And it allowed her to be herself sexually, and allowed her to perform what they would call bullduggers, which were females in men's attire in gay and lesbian clubs. And just think of mashup like Hattie McDaniel and Marlene Dietrich, that you'll get some sense there. In the initial story, If This Be Sin, in the collection, again, it covers Gladys Bentley, and it goes through her life from early days into the 1950s, where she became somewhat conventional because of the conservatism of the time, and it forced her to dress in women's clothes. And you see these in a real vibrancy to the storytelling, how there are elements of your past that always call you back. The short story really knocked me out, and initially I thought, well, it's just the one story in a bigger format, because the mini comic was like a very small sized, just a little bit bigger than Digest. I didn't know, and I'm so glad I picked this up, that she added to the collection the middle story is the story of Wendy and Lisa, who were the guitarist and keyboardist for Prince during the Revolution phase. And, when you think of Prince in the 80s, that's an era where you think of sexuality and, fluidity with gender and disregard of certain racial stereotypes. But when you get beyond the door, there's still an element of chauvinism, and there's still an element of male egotism. You see in the stories of Wendy and Lisa, who were out lesbians, or as out as they could have been up to a point, they're in a situation where they had to assert their own identities as musicians. There's an additional story called Dance the Blues, which is about two female friends who enter a dance competition. And music is a tie through all these three stories, and just with Hazel's absolutely natural ability as a storyteller, I really think this is material that a lot of people, particularly if people are loving stuff like Fun Home, this hits on a lot of those same particular vibes. If you can find this, If This Be Sin, I think you'll enjoy it. So, just one book that is way under the radar that I wanted to make sure people heard about. So,
very cool. Very cool.
Okay, well, we're gonna wrap this one up because some of us have to get up early.
Yeah.
Someone's out for the police, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah, sorry, that's sirens in the background of my thing. I'll mute myself.
No.
Oh, you're fine.
Wow, Victoria sounds like a bustling den of crime and danger.
Right?
Well, Arrow is just one city over, and he can't always get over here to fight crime, so...
Arrow, Flash, basically every superhero, every show ever is filmed in Vancouver, so...
Yeah. Matt, what was the first show that was really filmed in Vancouver that you remember?
X-Files.
Yeah.
Aww.
And they're back now. They've been filming again recently in Vancouver. I get super excited whenever I see anything in the news for that, because the last couple of times I've gone to Vancouver, I've actually gone to some of the buildings that they filmed at, and it's great when you recognize something. Sorry, I'm getting like a weird mechanical noise.
We're getting it too. It's like OMD or trying to perform.
Weird.
It's kind of cool though.
Yeah, and so after X-Files, just a ton of stuff started getting filmed there. I think Supernatural's filmed in Vancouver.
Richmond, actually. I think Vancouver and Richmond area.
Yep. One of the neatest things that I learned that was filmed in BC was John Carpenter's The Thing. I didn't know that when I first saw it, and then I was watching the making of featurette, and they actually the entire cast almost died driving up snowy roads in northern BC, and so it's just kind of a funny part of that sort of like director commentary that when they talk about it. But yeah, there's some cool stuff filmed around here.
Yeah, Bryan, you had some shows filmed in the '80s there. In the
Oh
Orlando
God,
area.
Superboy is the one I'm familiar with. Yeah.
Oof.
Ugh.
Yeah.
It was a UCF too, right before I went to school there.
Really?
Yeah, I think I was.
You went to Schuster University?
Basically.
Oh, that's cool.
It's weird though, because I go back and watch it, and I'm like, oh, okay. But I mean, the campus has changed so much. It's weird, but yeah.
Steve, you want to say anything about the shows filmed in Charlotte?
Well, I think the most recent one was Secrets and Lies, but because of, and I'm going to get political here, because our terrible governor has completely gutted the film credits, all of the film industry for North Carolina has moved to Georgia.
Yeah.
No, are you kidding me?
Now, the long-running Wilmington, North Carolina film studios and TV studios giving us great, wonderful shows like Sleepy Hollow or Dawson's Creek, among many others, Iron Man 3, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, they're all pretty much, I'd say, vacant at this point. Outside of a couple commercials and a lot of Christian TV, there's really not much being filmed right now.
That's so sad.
Yeah.
Very sucky. Very, very sucky. I mean, we had Banshee, we had... let's see. What are other? Well, Sleepy Hollow, Banshee were two of the big ones. Both of those went south. I think Banshee is in Louisiana now, and Sleepy Hollow I think is in Monroe, Georgia, which is where Vampire Diaries is filmed, as is The Walking Dead.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll come back, but it's going to take a couple of years to for any type of credits to attract more business.
Anyone got good news?
No.
Not as good as yours, I don't think.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, I got Blur tickets too.
Oh.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, must be nice.
Well, I'm trying to think. It's like been 13 years since I've seen them. Earlier this year, they had a free concert, but it was really tough to get tickets for a free show, so I didn't get them. But seen Blur.
Well, that's great.
I really made that sound like it's a much more exciting prospect than the way I relayed that information. All right, let's cut our losses here and go to the Woofs of the Week. But before we go to the Woofs of the Week, we're going to offer a first woof to one of our own co-hosts, Mr. Matt Broussard, for drawing that amazing piece that he did of all the hosts. Matt, thank you so much.
Aw, thanks.
Yes, thank you.
So many compliments.
Oh yeah, so many compliments on the artist and the likeness. So that is fantastic. Thank you so much, Matt.
Yeah.
Well, it was a real pleasure, and thank you very much to you guys for taking the reference photos and also just being, my subject, because that's not always that doesn't always go perfectly, and so I really appreciate you guys is lending your likeness to the artwork. So
Anytime.
No, you make us look so good.
I'll be your model anytime. You can draw me like your French woman.
Oh, I got a mental picture of that. Oh, baby.
Please say that it was not with the wig, because that would just...
No, there's a couch.
Okay, so funny story. A friend of mine went as Kate Winslet in Titanic a couple of years ago for Halloween, and he contacted me and asked me if I would do a charcoal drawing of him spread out on a couch with the blonde wig on and the jewel. And I did it. I went and bought charcoal paper and charcoal pencils. I hadn't worked with these kind of materials in a long time. It turned out really, really good. It turned out really funny and really hot in a weird way. And yeah, it's super fun. It's sitting in the drawer behind me. I keep meaning to mail it to him. It was a really funny project. I was totally up for it.
Cool.
Very cool.
All right, Woofs of the Week. I'm just going to read from my left to right. Matt, what is your Woof of the Week?
I'm going to give my woof to another artist that I think is fantastic, who has some new material available. Go check out www.burleypress.com. Jeremy Owen, he's got some brand new prints available. He just did one that's inspired by Barbarella. It's super fun. I love his Rule 63 bear posters. He's done Forbidden Planet and Attack of the 50-Foot Brute. They're super fun. They're inspired by old Killer Bee movies, and yeah, you can buy a print and he'll ship it to you. And I've got a bunch of Jeremy's work, and I love it all. It's great. He's really creative and works really hard to pursue his comic dreams while also, working a day job. So yeah, anytime he's got something for sale, I'm up for promoting his work.
Bob and Jeremy hung out with Tito in Palm Springs this weekend.
Really?
Yeah, that had to have been a good time.
Oh.
All right, Steve, how about you? Wolf of the Week.
Well, I just got, because I'm such a TV dork, I do want to give a shout out to two shows that have just started on US TV. The first one is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which is the adaptation of the Susanna Clarke novel from about, I think it came out, 12 years ago, maybe? 12, 13 years ago.
Right.
That was just an excellent novel on sort of an alternate history of England, where magic existed at one time, but it kind of faded away. And then just around the time of the Napoleonic Wars, it came back with a vengeance with two wizards, kind of I would say slightly equal power. I think Jonathan Strange, of course, ends up being the more powerful one, but who bring magic back, and their relationship and their rivalry. It's a really fantastic novel. It has been a while since I've read it, so I'm actually happy that the TV series is now available. It is showing in the U.S. on BBC America. It's pretty fantastic. It's a very, I would say, it's a very UK production, so there's not a huge number of special effects or anything, but the acting is fantastic. You'll recognize a lot of the actors from a lot of other fantasy and other projects, including one of the characters from I believe it was Hogfather adaptation of Terry Pratchett, the Hogfather miniseries from several years back, plays the fairy, and I can't remember his name right now, but sort of the fairy antagonist. But anyway, it is an excellent adaptation. I've been having a lot of fun watching it. I believe the second or third episode is available now on BBC America and on demand as well. Also, the second one is another adaptation, this time from a Swedish show. It's the original Swedish title was Äkta Människor, which means real humans. It's being broadcast as Humans in the US as a co-production between Channel 4 in the UK and AMC in the US. And so it's showing on AMC here, just started, about a sort of not too distant future where people have synthetic humans as personal servants and companions. And they look eerily human. They're very difficult to tell the difference except for their eyes and, of course, access ports. It is interesting to note that some of these synthetic humans are used as love companions, so you can think about access ports in many different ways. But in any case, they, just like in the original Swedish version, some of these synthetic humans begin developing emotions and senses of self thanks to one of the experimental programmers, and start banding together to try and figure out what life means when you are not technically alive. Of course, there's also a lot of opposition to these synthetic humans in the form of a real human anti-android movement that seeks to destroy them all. So it's a really interesting sort of morality tale mixed with sci-fi. So Bryan, it might be right up your alley. Just started on AMC and is, I believe, on demand as well.
I saw the preview during Halt and Catch Fire, and I was like,
excellent.
oh, I need to check that out.
Well, I think the original Swedish version is available. It ran for 2 seasons. I haven't seen the entire original run, but it was 2 seasons long. I think this one AMC is showing as a mini series. It's only 8 episodes long, but if it's really popular, if it does well in the ratings, then it might continue.
Cool.
So a couple ones real quick. One, I have given up most of my nightly life to Final Fantasy 14, and they're putting out a new patch next week called Heavensward, and it is very exciting. And I have given up any social life that I've had other than podcasts and brief dinners with my boyfriend to play this game. So if you are on Final Fantasy 14 and are interested, I'm in the gay guild, LGBT guild Taint on the, oh gosh, what's the name of the server? Gilgamesh server. And Taint is the rough trade gaming communities guild on there. They have a pride parade every year with colored chocobos. And the chat room is as dirty as I could hope it to be. So I'm very much enjoying losing my existence one level at a time to this amazing game. And I'm at level 30 something, 38. I'm at my age in my level. That's kind of weird. And I feel my mortality more and more as I play it. But no, it's a lot of fun. So if you like Final Fantasy, it's a great game. I also want to... Well, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask you, what is your level of excitement about the announcements from Square Enix this week?
As a Final Fantasy VII gamer way back in the day, I'm curious to see their remake. I'm excited because I like the game a lot, but I wonder how much of the charm will be lost with high definition graphics and voice acting, and yeah, I don't know. But overall, Kingdom Hearts looks awesome. I mean, all the stuff they've been announcing is really cool, so I'm excited. But no, so other shout outs real quick. I was on another podcast recently. I was on Overclocked After Dark, Friday Night Fan Fiction, which is the longest title of a podcast I think I've ever heard of. Basically, they read slash fic out loud with voices.
Oh my.
And I got to do a few voices myself. If you want to hear a really bad Grunkle Stan and a Diane Rehm sort of voice, that's the voices I chose really for my characters. But the exciting thing is it's about Harry Potter. So it's Harry Potter slash fic, but it's really not that exciting. I think that a couple characters like grab buttocks, and I think there's some implied this and that, but they're doing it ongoing. And so I guess when they get to the sex, like the really good stuff later on, they're going to bring us back on. But it was a lot of fun. I just recorded it on this past Monday, and it should be out when this episode airs. So Friday Night Fanfic, real fun show, and the guys on it and woman, they're just a lot of fun. It's a great fun show. And finally, real quick, Kickstarters, both of which I think are wrapping up, if not already closed. Square's Their Pair by Jace Peebles, and Post Replica by a group of people. We interviewed for Flame On Jace Peebles and then Anthony Ford from Post Replica. Like, both are exciting projects that are totally crowdsource funded, and one of them is going to be a graphic novel for kids, and the other one is going to be a tablet top, which I had never heard of before, but it's basically a tabletop game with an online MMO component, RPG, and both are really cool, have LGBT themes, and we got to interview both of the creators recently, and that's up on our Flame On Show podcast. So tons of stuff that if you're interested in gaming and LGBT stuff, there's a lot of good material out there these days. So check it out.
I really enjoyed that episode, by the way.
Oh, cool. I'm glad it turned out well, because it was literally like, hey, I want to talk to you, and oh, these guys want to talk to us. It's a twofer. I mean, it just kind of worked out well.
And the artwork in Square's Their Pair is like super gorgeous, amazing.
Damn those Disney people.
I have one woof of the week, and my woof is in relation to my guise as an actor and director. If I have a theatrical home, it is the Barn Theater in Montville, New Jersey. And unfortunately, this past Sunday, the Barn Theater lost its old man of the theater, Mr. Jay Mills, who passed away this past Sunday night at the age of 85. And it was a pleasure being directed by Jay, a pleasure acting in various shows with Jay, and I also once had the opportunity to direct Jay, which was a remarkably rewarding experience. But I also know that Jay, who I hope is enjoying an afterlife full of well-deserved curtain calls at this point, would not want this to be a downer. So my woof is to the theater itself, which is the Barn Theater. You can find it at barntheater.org, though I'm not active with the theater anymore. They are about to enter their next season this upcoming September, and if you go there, I'm sure you will be seeing a very high-quality production. So that's my woof. All right, folks. We're wrapping this one up. It's been a good one. I have to say, I'm like so knocked out by the discussion on Jupiter Circle. I literally had nothing to add. You guys are so good.
Oh,
Oh my God. I was like, yeah, like, no, he covered that. No, he covered that. No. So good. I love you guys.
oh, I love you.
So cool. And we love you too, audience. So, again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. You can subscribe to us on iTunes through the Earth 2 Network. And you can also find us on Stitcher Radio. And if you want to drop us a line, please do so by sending something to comicbookbears@gmail.com. Until next time, I'm Billy Z.
I'm Brian Pittard.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Matt Broussard.
You're going to hear an explosion and a woof, and fuck me.
Oh.
You're going to... God damn it. 37 episodes saying this, and I never get it right. You're going to hear a... You're going to hear a woof and an explosion, and we'll come at you again real soon. Wait.
Whoa.
You're going to hear a woof and an explosion, and we'll be... I gotta close this page of Midnighter. It's distracting. You're gonna hear an explosion, and you're gonna hear a woof and an explosion, and we'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone. I'm not editing that ending
You
at all.
should. Whoa.